So I came across a video the other day that somebody had sent me from upstate New York. And I'll probably link it at the bottom of this video, where it was nurses in upstate New York in Erie. And for their psych ward, they had one nurse for 50 patients. It's like 50 or 53 patients. And the nurses are all kind of gathered up together, basically protesting at the nurse manager's office or whoever is that's in charge. And they're like, we need to know what your plan is because you can't keep working with these kind of shortages. And this is what's happening in places like New York. Most of it, one, related to a lot of people retiring. You have a lot of older nurses that have been at this for quite some time. And either they retired before the pandemic or they retired, when they saw the mandates after that first wave. And a lot of people were just like, I'm not taking it. And they just retired. And you had a lot of seasoned nurses who had been in the game for, 30 plus years, working in various positions, that just said, I'm out. And so it caused a shortage. There was actually, when a lot of the nurses at the hospital that I was at retired, they were having issues because too many people retired for what was available for the pension, and they were trying to renegotiate the health benefits with the hospital, and the hospital was like, no, this is what you agreed to, we're going to stick by it. And it's because a lot of these retirement plans are just pyramid schemes, because they depend on other people to come in behind you and then basically to fund your retirement, so on and so forth. And that doesn't last. That's one of the things that bankrupted companies like Ford. When Ford had all these pension plans, they were basically paying more of their former workers money than their ex-workers. And that was one of the biggest things, I believe, during the financial crisis that bankrupted Ford, and the government had to bail out Ford. It was a lot of these pension plans. The same thing, you saw the exact same thing recently happen in the UK, where the UK stated, we're going to commit to austerity, we're going to start cutting. And that's one of the reasons why, what was her name? Tuss? There was the new prime minister that she stepped down like after 40 days. And it was because they just refused to cut spending. And instead of cutting spending, she lowered taxes. She lowered taxes, which during a period of inflation would just inject more liquidity into an already overinflated economy, which would just cause more inflation. But it was primarily because it's the will of the people. Thomas Jefferson stated, when the people realize that they can vote for money, the republic is over. And that is basically what we're witnessing in the West, as people have voted for themselves. The biggest generation that voted wealth for themselves was the baby boomers. And that is why during the 70s, America had such rampant inflation, because America got off of the gold standard, because they realized that people wanted more social programs, and they wouldn't let the government cut programs, and they also would not allow them to raise their taxes. So the only thing that America could do is print money and inflate the currency away to try to inflate the debt away. And this is what's been going on for a couple of generations now, but it's coming to an end. I just went to eat breakfast here. I'm here in Nebraska, and I just went to eat breakfast, and I had 2 eggs, 2 pieces of bacon, and 3 pancakes with a coffee and an orange juice for $25. And that is where the inflation, I'm here in Nebraska. I'm like, I thought the cost of living was lower, but this is where we're at. And what we're finding is that more and more people are dipping out of the labor market. Now, this is going to be the reason I start talking about nursing, is because the few fields that are dominated by women are going to collapse, because women are not like men. Well, they'll put in, these ridiculous long hours. Men will put in 70, 80, 100 hours if need be. Women are not going to do that. Most of the time when I was working in New York, people were taking off. We only work 13 shifts a month, right? Out of a 30-day or 28-day, 31-day period, we only work 13 days a month. And they're 12-hour shifts. On average, most nurses only worked 12 because they would utilize their sick days to take mental health days. And it was not unusual to find nurses either crying in the med room or talking about that they just cried in the med room because they were in charge and it was too hard and they were having a difficult day. Hearing about mental health days or work-life balance is a woman issue. It is not a man issue. And so that's why we're seeing shortages. You can look this up. You can Google the percentages of women who quit nursing within the first year. It's between 17 and 30%. By year 3, it is 40%. This same finding is both in the medical field because 50% of all doctors are women. 40% of women quit by year 6 or go part-time. And this presents a problem because now you have less people working. So what does that do? It causes wages to spiral higher. Nurses right now that are working in the like as a travel nurse, we're making more than an ER doctor. We make more than many doctors. At this moment right now, it is not unusual for a nurse to be making $250,000 or more easily, just doing a regular contract. If you really want to put in a lot of work and you want to work 6 days a week, you can easily make $25,000 to $30,000 a month as a nurse, taking care of 4 to 7 patients a night. It's not that difficult of a job, but for a lot of women, they just don't want to work. That's just the reality of women. They want the resources, they want the money, they want the lifestyle, but they don't want to put in the work. That's why you don't see a lot of these, female CEOs. They kind of role play and LARP as I'm a boss bitch. But the reality is that they don't want to put in any sort of real work like that. Now, because America has pushed so many women into the workplace, because women are the largest voting bloc. So you can look this up. There's numerous articles talking about, and I've posted a lot of them in many of the videos that I've done talking about voting. And you can Google things like women are the new army for the government, or single mothers are the new force for the government. And it's because these people vote for socialism. They vote for the expansion of government and for higher taxation to strip resources away from men to be given to them in either straight out welfare or pseudo welfare in the form of fake jobs that there's no market for, but the government forces these different companies to hire women, or the government says, you have to be diverse and you have to have X amount of women on your board. You have to have X amount of black women, Hispanic women, etc. Now, what this does is it makes companies inefficient. And the whole purpose of capitalism is efficiency. And so what we're seeing moving forward is shortages. And that's what we're seeing in the labor market, right? They're constantly talking about that there is a labor shortage. And it's because we have over 100 million people that are not participating in the labor market who could. And many of these individuals could be either retired on some sort of welfare, whether it's Social Security. Social Security is welfare. They're on a pension plan, which is welfare, which is corporate welfare. And at some point, it eventually becomes public welfare because these pension plans, like the one I spoke about in Ford, which you can easily look up online, becomes a problem for the government, and the government has to then bail out many of these institutions. And you see this going on with, for example, BlackRock. BlackRock had this exact same problem where the welfare is bankrupting many of these companies. And that's what will destroy the West. It's not some other country coming in and taking over. It is the people just don't want to work. The end result of socialism will always be economic collapse followed by authoritarianism. And that's what the Great Reset is, right? You will own nothing and you will be happy. We're going to watch you. We're going to spy on you. You see, like in the UK, where they have the 15-minute cities that they're talking about right now, where they don't want you to move out of this small little section that they're going to put people in. You can go here. You can't drive out of these areas X amount of times throughout the year. They talk about reducing oil. It's because nobody is participating. And the words of the Apostle Paul are going to come true, where he said, he who does not work does not eat. And this is going to happen in the entire West, where the only reason that we see these countries being able to survive is because they thrive off of the backs of second and third world countries. They thrive off of their labor. And so a lot of the food production, the average age of a farmer, I believe in America, is like 65. Who's going to farm the food in America in the next 10 years? You don't have a lot of young people getting involved in farming. And the only reason that America is able to buy food from other countries is because they're able to print money out of nowhere. Eventually, people are going to get tired of exchanging their goods that they're laboring for. They're out working in the hot sun, digging and planting in the earth, to be given a piece of paper that you just create. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a lot more countries that are buying gold because the price of the dollar is going too high because of interest rates. And the government is artificially trying to stem the collapse by raising interest rates, making dollars overseas harder to get so that it becomes more valuable by comparison to collapsing economies like in the UK or the EU, where you see the price of gas and oil has skyrocketed tenfold and the people can't heat their homes, to the point where these people that were all pro-green and we're going to make everything windmills and we're going to make everything electricity, all that nonsense, and they went back to burning coal. But they're telling all these other countries, all these second and third world countries, they're telling them, oh, you can't burn coal. It's bad for the earth. And the EU, the people were busy chopping down trees because they needed the wood to keep themselves warm. And so what you're going to see is, because of this over implementation of putting women into the workforce, when things become hard, those indices are going to collapse. And that's why you're seeing the price of nurses going higher, because there are few of them working. And any indice where that happens, where where you push women into these workforces, they're going to collapse. And so the price of healthcare is going to continue to go up and up and up, because you have less healthcare workers taking care of an older population, a dying population. The baby boomers is the largest generation that exists right now. When those people retire, who will care for them? Smaller generations that came after them. And when you see the younger generation that doesn't want to work, who's going to be there to fulfill those roles? When those people step out of the labor market, who will take their place? And the price of labor will continue to go higher and higher and higher. That's why the border is open. I've talked about this numerously. It's not that our borders are not secure, is that no one is having children. There's no one to replace the generation that's retiring. And so the only thing that America can do to stem the economic collapse and the collapse of the workforce is they have to pull from the southern border. They have to pull from many of these Hispanic countries. And I talked about this before, that Europe tried that, because Europe also has the same problem. The difference is that their neighbors that they can pull people from are typically Muslim countries that do not share their same woke mentality. And so they realized very quickly, when they started to have all these no-go zones and they started to have all these people committing crimes and beheading people, and they stopped importing. They realized this isn't going to work. And there's nothing for them to do. Japan has the exact same problem. Japan is basically an ethno-state. And it's collapsing because they refuse to bring in foreigners, because they don't want their society demographic to change, because they want to keep the same sort of customs. And so they're a dying population. In a couple of generations, there will be no Japan, and another nation will take them over, because that land is not going to lie idle, because they're not going to be able to defend it in some point. And this is that's why you see China removing the one-child policy because they're trying to grow their population. Where in America and in the West, you see the opposite. You see the talks of overpopulation, pushing women into the workforce, birth control, etc. Right? The jab, which is now being shown to kill many people. And it's because they're trying to get rid of many of these welfare sponges. And it is what it is. This is the state of the West, across the entire West. This is not just an American problem. Other countries are experiencing it more than we are, and it's only because America is the world reserve currency for now. When that goes away, you will see the largest collapse of any nation in history. And it will be in our lifetime. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.